It isn't going to go away. It hasn't gone away for the last 30 to 40 years, and there's no sign of it going away now.
The U.S. national debt just crossed $33 trillion. Inflation is eating away at savings faster than wage growth. Meanwhile, 63% of Americans now live paycheck to paycheck, and global economic power is shifting away from the West. Renowned economist Richard Wolff says this isn't just a phase, it's a warning. What's coming next could reshape everything you know about money, work, and survival in the modern world. Are you prepared for what's about to unfold? Because most people aren't. Let's dive into what Richard Wolff believes is inevitable. Neoliberal capitalism was supposed to bring prosperity by promoting free markets and global trade, but in reality, it has only deepened inequality. Wolff highlights that we are now witnessing the end of neoliberalism, and the consequences are already apparent. The inequality gap in the US has reached alarming levels, with the top 1% owning over 40% of the country's wealth. Meanwhile, the bottom 90% have been left to struggle. This isn't just a theoretical issue, it's a clear reality that affects millions of lives every day. According to Oxfam, the wealth of the richest 1% has increased by 27% since 2020, while the bottom 50% of the global population saw their wealth decrease by 11%. This staggering inequality is no longer just a statistic. It's a time bomb that threatens to destabilize our society. Capitalism today has outlived its usefulness, Richard Wolff argues. It has become a system of runaway inequality and financial manipulation that no longer serves the majority of people. Wolff's words reflect what many are feeling. The system is rigged, and it's reaching a breaking point. The widening wealth gap is unsustainable, and while the wealthy continue to accumulate riches, the majority of people are stuck in a cycle of wage stagnation and rising living costs. The more this divide grows, the more difficult it becomes to maintain the illusion of stability. Globalization was supposed to lift all boats, but instead, it's left many struggling to stay afloat. As companies sought cheaper labor abroad, millions of high-paying manufacturing jobs in the US and UK were outsourced to countries like China, India, and Mexico, where wages were pennies on the dollar. The result? The middle class in the West has been hollowed out, replaced by low-wage, precarious jobs. Wolff explains it bluntly. Globalization didn't make the world richer for everyone. It made the world richer for a small elite, while millions of workers in the West paid the price. As industries relocated to places with lower labor costs, the promise of job security and a better life in the West quickly faded. Today, workers in the US face stagnant wages and the loss of good union jobs, replaced by service roles that offer little in terms of stability or long-term growth. This shift has led to a global race to the bottom, where wages continue to fall, and the working class worldwide is forced to adapt to an increasingly unstable economy. As neoliberal capitalism falters, we're seeing the rise of economic nationalism. Wolff warns that countries are starting to pull away from globalization, and this shift is creating new divides in the global economy. Over the last few years, trade wars have become a hallmark of global economics, particularly between the US and China. In 2018, Donald Trump initiated a trade war with China, slapping tariffs on billions of dollars worth of goods. The impact was immediate. Global trade slowed, and supply chains that once flowed smoothly began to fracture. The effects of this disruption won't be fixed quickly, and economists predict it could take years to reverse. Countries once focused on international cooperation are now prioritizing national interests. In fact, the shift towards economic nationalism is becoming increasingly clear. Wolff warns, The era of globalization is over. In its place, we will see a fragmented world economy, with countries looking inward rather than outward. The result of this growing economic nationalism: disruptions in everything from technology exports to manufacturing. The global supply chain, which once connected markets across borders, is now showing signs of breaking down. As nations turn inward, we may see more trade barriers, tariffs and restrictions that make goods more expensive and less available. This rise in protectionism may lead to a slower economic recovery, particularly for the West, which has relied on global trade for decades. The real game changer, however, is the rise of China and India. These two countries have become economic powerhouses, reshaping the balance of global power. China has transformed into the world's manufacturing hub, lifting millions out of poverty while dominating key industries like electronics, textiles, and steel. In the process, it has shifted the center of global economic influence away from the West. Wolff accurately predicts economic nationalism will be the dominant force of the future, and the West must now compete with rising economies in Asia and the global South. The old world order, where Western nations held most of the economic power, is now in decline. As China and India continue to grow, the West is faced with the challenge of adapting to this new reality. For the first time in modern history, the West is no longer in a dominant position. The rise of these Eastern giants means that global power will be shared, and the West's strategic advantages may start to erode. Global trade is no longer the unifying force it once was. Richard Wolff highlights the rise of economic nationalism, where countries are prioritizing their own interests over international cooperation. With tensions rising, especially between the US and China, the world is heading towards a fragmented economy. A clear signal of America's declining power can be seen in its strained relationship with Taiwan. Recently, countries like Honduras have switched their diplomatic allegiance from Taiwan to China, leaving the US further isolated in its efforts to maintain Taiwan's independence. For Richard Wolff, this shift marks a turning point. What we're seeing is the growing confidence of China and the diminishing influence of the United States. The world is shifting its loyalties. As China strengthens its ties with more nations, the US is struggling to keep its foothold in the region. For decades, the US has been a dominant force in East Asia, particularly with its defense agreements with Taiwan. But as China's global reach expands, the US's ability to influence regional politics appears to be weakening. The Taiwan crisis is not just about Taiwan's sovereignty. It's about the erosion of American authority in global diplomacy. Another telling example of the US's declining dominance is the role China is now playing in the Middle East. In a historic move, China successfully brokered a peace deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia, two nations that had been at odds for decades. The US, once the undisputed leader in the region, was conspicuously absent from these discussions. Wolff highlights this shift. China has stepped into the vacuum left by the US, showing the world that the balance of global power has already begun to change. This agreement signals a new era of diplomacy, where the US no longer has exclusive influence over key geopolitical regions. The ongoing Ukraine conflict has further exposed the limitations of US power. Despite economic sanctions and military support for Ukraine, Russia has shown resilience, holding strong against Western pressure. Wolff warns, the US is no longer the unquestioned leader of the world. It's a reality that we need to come to terms with. With Russia gaining support from nations like China and India, the US's ability to dictate the terms of global conflict is increasingly in doubt. America's influence is fading and the global stage is evolving. The question is no longer whether the US will remain at the top, but how quickly it will adapt to this new world order. Before we continue, take a second to like this video. It ensures more people see our work and keeps us energized to create more. Now, back to it. As the US empire declines, the question arises, what comes next? Will the world see the rise of another global empire, possibly China's? Or will the future be shaped by a multipolar world where power is more evenly distributed? One of the most significant shifts in global power is the rise of China, which has adopted a unique economic model that is neither purely capitalist nor socialist. Instead, it's a hybrid, a combination of state control and private enterprise. This model has allowed China to grow at a pace that the West simply cannot match. Richard Wolff explains, China has demonstrated that you can achieve rapid economic growth with a hybrid system. It's neither fully capitalist nor socialist, but a blend that's allowed it to outpace the West. This model has not only transformed China into a global economic powerhouse, but it's also starting to shape the future of global capitalism. The West, with its reliance on outdated systems, is struggling to keep up. The China model offers a new path forward, one that integrates state-led planning with private innovation, allowing for rapid development and economic stability. As the West faces slow growth, China is becoming a blueprint for the future. Wolff warns that the US and Europe could be left behind unless they find ways to modernize and adapt to the shifting global dynamics. Alongside the rise of economic nationalism and China's growing influence, the global working class is beginning to wake up. Workers worldwide are starting to demand more, not just for themselves, but for the entire system to be more equitable. With wages stagnating and good jobs disappearing, the working class has been growing more vocal, calling for better conditions, fair wages, and a redistribution of power. Wolff points out, the collapse of global capitalism and the rise of nationalism are giving workers a unique opportunity to demand change. This is the moment for a global awakening. As inequality deepens and job insecurity spreads, labor movements are gaining momentum in many parts of the world, driven by the desire for a fairer system. For Wolff, this represents a turning point, a moment of opportunity for workers to unite, mobilize, and challenge the systems that have kept them at the bottom for so long. This is not just about fair wages. It's about creating a world order that prioritizes the many, not the few. The rising power of the working class could be the key to reshaping the global economy in a way that better serves everyone, not just the rich. The world is shifting, and while we can't change everything instantly, there are steps you can take today to stay ahead. Here's how to prepare for the changes ahead and stay resilient in an uncertain future. As the global economy continues to shift, staying informed is more important than ever. Richard Wolff emphasizes that understanding the broader economic trends and the forces driving change is critical. The more you understand the system we live in, the better equipped you'll be to navigate the disruptions ahead. By following economists like Wolff and keeping an eye on global developments, you can prepare yourself for what's coming. The future is uncertain, and those who remain unaware may find themselves caught off guard. Economic changes aren't just abstract concepts. They affect jobs, wealth, and power structures. By reading, listening to thought leaders, and being aware of shifts like the rise of economic nationalism or the fall of neoliberal capitalism, you'll be ready for whatever comes next. In today's rapidly changing world, the ability to adapt is essential. Richard Wolff highlights that the world is evolving quickly, and jobs that once seemed stable are disappearing. The only way to stay relevant is to focus on future-proof skills. The old way is gone, and the new world is already here. As industries change, the need for new skills is growing. Whether it's tech, sustainability, or even the creative economy, those who are ready to learn and adapt will thrive. Wolff points out that stagnation is a risk, especially when economies are in flux. Resilience and the willingness to embrace new learning opportunities will be crucial for success in this changing world. The world is more connected than ever. The rise of global economic powers and increasing interconnectedness means that understanding and building relationships that transcend borders is critical. Wolff suggests, as the world splits into different economic zones, building networks that span countries will be your most valuable asset. The future is global, and the more you can connect with diverse regions, the more adaptable and resilient you'll be in this changing environment. The world is changing fast, and Richard Wolff's warnings can't be ignored. Global capitalism is crumbling, and if you're not prepared, you could be left behind. We're at a crossroads. The old system is dying. The question is, will you be ready for the new world emerging? Drop your thoughts in the comments. How will you adapt to the changes ahead? Stay ahead of the curve. Hit like and subscribe to this video. Don't let these changes catch you off guard. For more crucial insights, watch our next video. US debt crisis, Janet Yellen's last warning to Congress, and stay tuned for more essential updates.